The courtroom was hushed. The judge, an elderly man with gray hair and thick spectacles, leaned forward, gazing at the 12-year-old African-American boy standing confidently in front of him. A gradual smile spread across his face as he tapped his gavel lightly on the bench. "All right, young man," the judge said, his tone amused yet firm. "Let's play a game, truth or deception. I'll ask you some questions and we'll see if you can outwit me. Does that sound fair?" A murmur of laughter rippled through the courtroom. The boy, dressed in a well-pressed suit that looked oversized for his small stature, didn't laugh. He simply nodded, his sharp brown eyes fixed on the judge. The judge cleared his throat and leaned back in his seat. "First question," he began, his grin broadening. "The law claims that a person is innocent until proven guilty, truth or deception." The boy didn't blink. "Deception," he answered. The courtroom gasped. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and why is that?" "Because in reality, people are presumed guilty first and have to prove their innocence," the boy stated calmly, "especially if they're African American." The judge's smile faded a little. He shifted in his chair, glancing toward the courtroom spectators. Some whispered in agreement, others in shock. "All right," the judge continued, his voice a little less playful. "Let's try another one. A judge must be completely impartial and unbiased in every case, truth or deception." The boy's lips curled into a knowing smile. "Deception," the judge frowned. "Explain." "Because judges are human," the boy replied smoothly, "and humans have prejudices whether they admit it or not. You, for example, have already decided that I'm just a kid who doesn't know what he's talking about. That's your prejudice." The courtroom erupted into shocked murmurs. The judge's face turned red. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. "Order," he barked. The courtroom fell silent once more. The judge took a deep breath, rubbing his forehead. He looked at the boy, suddenly realizing this wasn't going to be the easy game he had anticipated. He had underestimated him, and now he felt he was about to lose. Earlier that day, the courtroom had been buzzing with anticipation. Reporters sat in the back rows, their cameras flashing as they whispered among themselves. The case had captured the city's attention. An unjust arrest, a child prodigy, and a judge known for his harsh rulings. 12-year-old Marcus Jackson stood between his public defender and his mother, his hands neatly folded in front of him. He didn't fidget, he didn't look scared. In fact, he looked completely at ease. The arrest had been a mistake, or rather, that's what the police wanted people to believe. Marcus had been sitting in the public library when officers stormed in, accusing him of being involved in a recent burglary. The evidence was a vague description of an African-American boy in a hoodie. Never mind that Marcus was reading a book on constitutional law when they dragged him away in handcuffs. The video of his arrest had gone viral. People were outraged, but outrage didn't mean justice. Now Marcus stood before Judge Richard Wallace, a man with a reputation for handing out severe sentences. The judge studied him from behind his glasses. "Son, do you understand why you're here today?" Marcus lifted his chin. "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you know what you're being accused of?" "Yes." The judge adjusted his glasses. "Do you have anything to say before we begin?" Marcus hesitated, then spoke. "I'd like to represent myself." Gasps filled the room. His mother gripped his arm. Marcus, but the boy shook his head. He had made up his mind. Judge Wallace's eyes twinkled with amusement. "You want to act as your own lawyer?" "Yes," the judge chuckled. "That's bold." "Smart," Marcus corrected. The judge chuckled again. "All right then, young man, let's see if you're as smart as you think you are." And that was how it started, a game, a test, a battle of wits, between a seasoned judge and a 12-year-old legal prodigy. The courtroom leaned forward, eager to watch the spectacle unfold, but no one, not even the judge, was prepared for what would happen next. Marcus was about to turn the entire case upside down, and before the judge knew it, he would realize something terrifying. He was losing control. The judge cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. He had expected this to be amusing, a quick lesson in humility for a confident kid. Instead, Marcus Jackson had turned the courtroom into a chessboard, and Judge Wallace had just realized he was playing against a grandmaster. "All right, Marcus," the judge said, leaning forward, "let's see how well you understand the law since you've chosen to represent yourself. I'll give you the chance to make an opening statement." Marcus nodded, stepping forward with the confidence of a seasoned lawyer. His suit still looked oversized, but suddenly, no one noticed. Was his presence that filled the room, not his clothing. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steady, "I stand before you today not just as a defendant but as an example of a system that is flawed. I was arrested without probable cause. I was accused based on nothing more than my skin color and the assumption that I must be guilty. But today I will prove that the law, your law, was broken not by me but by those who arrested me." The courtroom fell into a stunned silence. Even the reporters stopped typing. The judge's fingers tapped lightly on the bench. "That's a strong accusation, young man." "It's not an accusation," Marcus said, tilting his head. "It's a fact." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The judge sighed, glancing at the prosecutor, a tall man in a crisp navy suit. "Mr. Callahan, I assume the state is ready to present its evidence." The prosecutor stood, smirking slightly. He had underestimated the boy too, but now he was ready to put him in his place. "Absolutely, Your Honor," Callahan said, stepping forward. "The state has surveillance footage placing the defendant near the scene of the crime as well as a witness who identified him." Marcus didn't flinch. "Objection." Judge Wallace raised an eyebrow. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that being near a crime is not the same as committing one," Marcus said smoothly, "and I'd like to see this so-called footage." The judge nodded. "Let's see it." A screen flickered to life in the courtroom, showing a grainy black and white video of a figure in a hoodie walking past a convenience store. It was dark. The person's face was barely visible. "This," Callahan said confidently, "was taken just minutes before the store was broken into. This individual matches the description given by our witness." Marcus folded his arms. "What description?" Callahan frowned. "Excuse me? You said I matched the description," Marcus repeated. "So what was the description?" The prosecutor glanced at his notes. The suspect was described as a young African-American male wearing a hoodie. Marcus let out a slow, deliberate breath. "So to be clear, the only reason I was arrested was because I am an African-American kid wearing a hoodie?" The courtroom buzzed again. Callahan's jaw tightened. "You were in the area, and the witness confirmed." "Which witness?" Marcus cut in. Callahan, clearly irritated, "will be bringing them in to testify shortly." Marcus nodded. "Good, because I have a few questions for them." The judge held up his hand. "Let's keep this moving. Mr. Callahan, do you have any stronger evidence than a blurry video and a vague description?" Callahan hesitated, then shook his head. "Not at this time, Your Honor." Marcus smiled slightly. "Interesting." The judge leaned forward. "All right, Marcus, since you're so confident, why don't you tell us where you were at the time of the crime?" Marcus adjusted his tie. "Gladly. I was at the City library. Callahan scoffed. Can you prove that? Yes, Marcus said, and I can. Prove something even more interesting. The judge narrowed his eyes. And what's that? Marcus turned to the bailiff. Your Honor, I'd like to submit my library checkout records as evidence. A low gasp rippled through the courtroom. Callahan frowned. How does that prove anything? Because Marcus said not only was I at the library, but I checked out a book at the exact time the store was being robbed. He turned to the judge. The timestamp is printed on the receipt. It's irrefutable proof that I wasn't there. The judge's lips pressed together. Bring the document forward. The courtroom watched as the bailiff handed the receipt to the judge. He scanned it quickly, his expression unreadable. After a long moment, he sighed. This receipt shows that you checked out a book at 8:42 p.m. exactly, Marcus said, and the store was robbed at 8:40 p.m. There's no way I could have done it. Callahan's face paled. Marcus turned to the prosecutor, his voice calm but powerful. You arrested me with no real evidence. You brought me here with nothing but assumptions, and now your entire case is falling apart. Because you underestimated me. The judge exhaled, rubbing his forehead. All right, let's take a short recess. We'll reconvene in 20 minutes. He banged his gavel, but his expression was unreadable. The courtroom doors burst open. A police officer rushed in, looking frantic. Your Honor, he called, panting, we just got a report. The real culprit has been caught, and he already confessed. The room froze. All eyes turned to Marcus. He didn't say a word, just smiled. A heavy silence settled over the courtroom. The police officer, still panting from his rush inside, held up a manila folder. The real culprit was caught breaking into another store just 15 minutes ago. When questioned, he confessed to both crimes, including the one Marcus was accused of. Judge Wallace stared at the officer, then slowly turned to Marcus. The 12-year-old genius stood tall, his face unreadable. He had known it all along. The judge tapped his fingers on his desk, his expression darkening. Officer, are you telling me that we've been putting this boy on trial for a crime someone else just admitted to? The officer shifted, uncomfortably. Yes, Your Honor. Murmurs exploded through the courtroom. Reporters frantically took notes, cameras flashed, and Marcus's mother grabbed her chest, overwhelmed by emotions. Callahan, the prosecutor, clenched his jaw. He had been so sure, so arrogant. Now he looked like a fool. Judge Wallace exhaled through his nose, clearly irritated. Mr. Callahan, do you have any explanation for this? Callahan opened his mouth but hesitated. There was no explanation that wouldn't make him look incompetent. His case had just collapsed in real time. The judge turned back to Marcus. His voice was quieter now but held something new. Respect. Marcus, you knew, didn't you? Marcus nodded. I knew I was innocent. I just needed time to prove it. The judge sighed, rubbing his temples. This is a disaster. He took a long breath, then sat up straight. The charges against Marcus Jackson are officially dropped. This case is dismissed. A cheer erupted from the back of the courtroom. Marcus's mother rushed forward, throwing her arms around him. Oh, baby, I knew you'd prove them wrong. She sobbed into his shoulder. Marcus hugged her back, but his mind was still working. He had won, but something about this didn't sit right. The police had arrested him too easily. The prosecutor had pushed too hard with almost no real evidence, and now, just as he was about to break the case apart, the real suspect was conveniently caught. Something was off. The judge slammed his gavel, bringing order back to the room. Court is adjourned, but just as people began packing up, Marcus spoke up. Wait. Everyone turned to look at him. The judge frowned. Marcus, the case is over, you're free to go. I know, Marcus said, but I have a question for the officer. The officer shifted, suddenly uncomfortable. Yes? Marcus narrowed his eyes. You said the real suspect was caught just 15 minutes ago. That's right, the officer replied, and he confessed on the spot. The officer hesitated. Well, yes. Marcus tilted his head. That's odd. The courtroom fell silent again. Judge Wallace leaned forward. Why is that odd? Because confessions don't usually happen that fast, Marcus said. The suspect caught in the act might deny it, ask for a lawyer, or try to negotiate, but this guy just confessed immediately. That doesn't make sense. Callahan jumped in, desperate to end this nightmare. Marcus, the case is over, you're free. Let it go. But Marcus shook his head. No, something isn't right, and I want to know what. His mother tugged on his arm. Baby, we can go home now. Let's not push our luck. But Marcus had already turned back to the officer. Where was this suspect caught? The officer swallowed. Down on 5th Street. Marcus's eyes narrowed. 5th Street, that's on the other side of the city. The officer nodded. Yes, but Marcus cut him off. Then how was he in 2 places at once? A ripple of shock moved through the courtroom. Judge Wallace's brow furrowed. What do you mean, Marcus? Marcus turned to the judge, his mind racing. If he was caught on 5th Street breaking into a store, that means he was in the middle of committing another crime. So when did he have time to confess about the first robbery? The officer's face turned pale. Marcus pressed further. And if he confessed, what exactly did he say? The officer licked his lips, looking nervous now. He said he did it. That's all. Marcus stared him down. Did he give details? The officer hesitated. Well, not exactly. Did he mention the store by name? Marcus pushed. The officer shifted uncomfortably. Not specifically, no. Marcus folded his arms. Then that's not a confession. That's a cover-up. A stunned hush filled the courtroom. Judge Wallace's expression darkened. Officer, who ordered you to say this? The officer stiffened. I was just told by my superior that the case was closed. Who is your superior? Marcus asked. The officer's mouth clamped shut. Judge Wallace slammed his gavel. You will answer the question. The officer flinched. It was but before he could finish, the back doors of the courtroom burst open. 2 more officers stormed in, their faces hard. One of them, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a badge that gleamed under the fluorescent lights, spoke first. That's enough, he said, his voice like steel. This case is over. Everyone needs to go home. Marcus's heart pounded. Something was very, very wrong. Judge Wallace frowned. Who are you? Captain Reynolds, the man said coldly, and I'm here to make sure this doesn't go any further. The entire courtroom seemed to freeze. Marcus swallowed. He had cracked open something bigger than he realized, and now the people in charge didn't want him to dig any deeper. Judge Wallace's face turned to stone. Are you telling me that a police captain is walking into my courtroom to interfere with justice? Reynolds didn't blink. I'm telling you that this is bigger than one case. Let it go. The judge stood, his anger barely contained. Get out of my courtroom. Reynolds smiled coldly. Be careful, Your Honor. Some cases aren't meant to be won. Then he turned and walked out, his officers following behind him. The door slammed shut behind them. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Marcus exhaled, his mind spinning. He had won his case. but had also just stumbled onto something much bigger, something dangerous, and now the real fight was about to begin. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension. Everyone had seen it, the way Captain Reynolds had walked in like he owned the place, the way he had tried to shut everything down with just a few words. But Marcus Jackson wasn't the kind of kid to let things go. He had spent years reading law books, understanding rules, learning how the system worked, and if there was one thing he knew for sure, it was this. When someone tells you to stop looking, that means you're close to the truth. Judge Wallace sat stiffly in his chair, his fingers gripping the bench. His eyes were sharp, watching the doors where Reynolds had just left. Marcus took a step forward. "Your Honor," he said, his voice clear, "you see what just happened, right?" The judge turned to him. "Yes, Marcus, I saw." The courtroom was silent. Callahan, the prosecutor, looked uneasy. The reporters in the back were scribbling down notes as fast as they could. Then the judge sighed, rubbing his temples. "But Marcus, listen to me carefully." He met the boy's eyes. "This is not just a case anymore. This is something else, and it's dangerous." Marcus squared his shoulders. "Then that means we have to do something about it." His mother grabbed his arm, her voice trembling. "Baby, please, we won your case. Let's go home before something bad happens." Marcus turned to her. "Mom, something bad already happened. I was arrested for no reason. They wanted to throw me in jail without evidence, and now the police are trying to cover up the truth." He shook his head. "I can't just walk away." Judge Wallace studied him for a long moment, then sighed heavily. "You're really not going to let this go, are you?" Marcus shook his head. The judge sat back. "Fine, but if we're going to do this, we have to be smart. We need proof, real proof that something bigger is going on." Marcus nodded. "Then we start with the confession." Callahan scoffed. "Oh, for the love of Marcus, this case is done. You won. Why are you still digging?" Marcus turned to him, his face unreadable. "Because I know you knew." Callahan's smug expression faltered. "Excuse me? You knew this case was weak," Marcus said. "You knew the evidence against me was trash, and yet you pushed it anyway. Why?" Callahan's face turned red. "I was just doing my job." "No," Marcus said, stepping closer. "You were doing someone else's job. Who told you to make sure I lost?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Callahan's jaw clenched. He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. He's just a kid. He doesn't understand how the system works." But Judge Wallace didn't stop Marcus. Instead, he leaned forward. "Actually, I think he understands it better than most." Callahan swallowed. He looked nervous now. Marcus continued. "The so-called confession happened too fast. The real suspect was caught at the perfect moment, and now a police captain just walked into a courtroom and tried to shut everything down." He folded his arms. "That's not a coincidence. That's a cover-up." Callahan's face was pale. "This is insane." Judge Wallace drummed his fingers against the bench. "Mr. Callahan," he said in a low voice, "answer the boys' question. Did someone pressure you to make sure Marcus was found guilty?" Callahan licked his lips. "I can't talk about that." Marcus smiled slightly. "That means yes." The courtroom exploded into murmurs. The reporters were whispering, cameras clicking. Callahan's hands clenched into fists. I need to leave," he said, grabbing his briefcase. But before he could take a step, the judge banged his gavel. "Mr. Callahan, you will sit down," Judge Wallace ordered. Callahan froze, hesitated, then slowly sat back down. His hands were shaking. Marcus's heart pounded. He was so close to breaking this wide open. Judge Wallace turned to the officer who had first delivered the confession. Officer, I want the full report on this so-called confession right now. The officer swallowed. I don't have it with me. Then go get it, the judge snapped. We're not leaving until we see it. The officer hesitated, then nodded quickly and rushed out of the room. Marcus exhaled, his mind racing. He had expected to clear his name. Today, he hadn't expected to stumble into something much, much bigger. Judge Wallace tapped his gavel again. We will take a 30-minute recess while we wait for that report. Court is not adjourned. People stood stretching, whispering. Marcus turned to his mother. See, I told you something was off. She rubbed her temples. Baby, you are going to give me a heart attack. Marcus smiled a little, but he couldn't relax yet. He stepped outside the courtroom, heading toward the water fountain in the hallway. He needed a second to think, but just as he reached for the button, a hand grabbed his shoulder. Marcus tensed. He turned. Slowly, Captain Reynolds stood there, his expression cold. You don't know what you're messing with, kid. Marcus swallowed hard but didn't look away. Reynolds leaned in. His voice was a whisper. If you're smart, you'll walk away from this right now. Marcus forced himself to stand tall. And if I don't? Reynolds smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Then you might not make it home. A chill ran down Marcus's spine. Reynolds let go of his shoulder and walked away like nothing had happened. Marcus stood frozen, his heart hammering. He had just been threatened, and now he knew one thing for sure. Whatever was going on, whatever they were trying to hide, it was bigger than he ever imagined, and they were willing to do anything to keep him quiet. Marcus stood frozen by the water fountain, his heart pounding. Captain Reynolds's words echoed in his head. Then you might not make it home. It wasn't a jest. It wasn't an idle threat. The way Reynolds had said it, the cold smile, the dead look in his eyes meant he was serious. Marcus swallowed hard, forcing himself to breathe. He had read about corruption, about cover-ups, but he never thought he'd be living one. Now it was real, and he was in danger. He turned back toward the courtroom, his legs moving faster than his mind. He needed to tell someone, Judge Wallace, his mom, anyone who would listen. But just as he reached for the courtroom door, his instinct screamed at him. Wait, think. Reynolds had threatened him in a public hallway, which meant one of two things. Reynolds was reckless, or Reynolds knew no one would believe Marcus. Marcus clenched his fists. He needed proof. He needed a plan. Taking a deep breath, he turned away from the door and walked quickly toward the courthouse exit. He wasn't running away, he was going hunting. Outside, the afternoon sun burned hot. Marcus scanned the parking lot, his brain working a mile a minute. Reynolds was part of something bigger. That much was clear. The confession had been fake. The trial had been rushed, and now a police captain was personally trying to scare him off. Marcus had to find out what they were hiding. He pulled out his phone and typed quickly, "Meet me at the library, urgent." He sent the message to his best friend, Elijah, then he started walking. He didn't notice the black SUV parked across the street or the man inside watching him go. The library was nearly empty when Marcus arrived. The smell of old books and ink filled the air, a comforting scent in the middle of all this chaos. Elijah was already there, sitting at their usual table in the back. "You better have a good reason for calling me out here, bro," Elijah said, leaning forward. "I was in the middle of a game." Marcus sat down. "I need your help." Elijah blinked. "Wait, you need my help? The boy genius needs help?" Marcus didn't smile. "Serious." Elijah groaned. "Okay, what's going on?" Marcus lowered his voice. I think the cops are covering something up, and I think they were ready to throw me in jail to keep it hidden. Elijah stared. Wait, what? Marcus quickly explained everything. The rushed case, the fake confession, Captain Reynolds' threat. When he finished, Elijah let out a low whistle. Dude, you need to get out of town. Marcus shook his head. No, I need to find out what they're hiding. Elijah sighed, running a hand over his face. You always got to be difficult, huh? Marcus smirked slightly. You wouldn't be my friend if I wasn't. Elijah snorted. True. He leaned forward. Okay, what's the plan? Marcus exhaled. First, we find out who the real suspect is, the one they arrested. Elijah nodded. You thinking fake name or fake person? Marcus rubbed his chin. Could be either, but I have an idea. He pulled out his phone and typed quickly. Juvenile arrest records, city database. A login page popped up. Elijah leaned over, reading the screen. You do realize you need an official login to get in, right? Marcus didn't answer, he just opened another app. Elijah's eyes widened. Bro, no way you're hacking the police database. Not hacking, Marcus said, tapping away, just borrowing access. Elijah whistled. You are so going to get arrested again. Marcus ignored him, fingers flying. Seconds later, he was in. A list of recent arrests filled the screen. He scrolled quickly, and then there it was. Suspect Nathaniel Brooks, age 19, crime. Burglary, confession, yes. Marcus clicked the file, but instead of a detailed report, there was almost nothing. No mugshot, no fingerprints, just a name and a confession. Elijah frowned. That's weird, right? Marcus nodded. Super weird. He scrolled down until he found something even stranger. Nathaniel Brooks had been arrested 1 hour before the robbery even happened. Marcus's blood ran cold. Elijah grabbed his arm. Wait, are you saying? Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. They arrested him before the crime happened. That means Elijah finished the sentence for him. They set it up. The boys stared at each other. Then Elijah grabbed his phone. We got to tell someone. But before Marcus could respond, a new message popped up on his screen. A blocked number. Stop digging or else. Marcus's stomach clenched. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something. Through the library window, a black SUV parked across the street, watching them. Marcus grabbed Elijah's arm. We have to go now. Elijah saw the SUV and swallowed hard. Yeah, good idea. The two boys shot to their feet and headed for the back exit. They didn't see the man in the SUV pick up his radio. They're moving. Follow them. And just like that, the hunt was on. Marcus and Elijah slipped out the library's back door, their hearts pounding. The sun had started to set, casting long shadows across the alley. Elijah grabbed Marcus's arm. Dude, we are in some deep trouble right now. Marcus didn't argue. He could feel it, the weight of something much bigger than them pressing in, something dangerous. The black SUV hadn't moved yet, but Marcus knew it wouldn't be long before they were followed. He turned to Elijah. We need to get somewhere safe. Elijah nodded. Yeah, but where? Marcus's brain worked fast. His house? No, too obvious. The police had already been there when they arrested him. Elijah's place? Same problem. Then an idea hit him. My uncle's barbershop, Marcus said. Elijah frowned. The one on 12th Street? Yeah, he closes late and he's got security cameras everywhere. If they follow us there, we'll have proof. Elijah hesitated. Man, I don't know. This is feeling like some spy movie stuff, and in spy movies, the guys like us don't make it to the end. Marcus managed a small smile. Then let's make sure we do. Elijah sighed. Fine, but if I die, I'm haunting you. Marcus nodded. Fair deal. Now, let's move. They took off, cutting through side streets, avoiding the main roads. Marcus's heart pounded with every step, but when he glanced back, the SUV was gone. Elijah noticed too. I don't like that. Marcus didn't either. They had been watched, but now they were being hunted. The barber shop sat on the corner of 12th and Main, a small brick building, with a flickering neon sign that read Jackson's Cuts. Marcus knocked on the glass door. After a few seconds, his uncle, Terrence Jackson, peeked out. His thick beard was speckled with gray, and his tired eyes widened when he saw Marcus. Boy, what are you doing out this late? Uncle T, we need to come inside. It's important. Terrence frowned but unlocked the door, letting them in. The moment the door shut, Marcus turned to his uncle. Someone is after us, he said, voice low. Terrence's expression hardened. Who? Marcus hesitated. Cops. His uncle stiffened. You serious? Marcus nodded. Terrence sighed, running a hand over his face. Come to the back. The shop smelled like aftershave and fresh-cut hair. The clippers were still on the counter, and old jazz music played from the radio. Terrence led them to his office, closing the door behind them. All right, he said. Talk. Marcus told him everything. The fake case, the fake confession, the threat from Captain Reynolds, and now the mysterious SUV. By the time he finished, Terrence looked furious. That's why I don't trust none of them, his uncle muttered, shaking his head. They do whatever they want, and when they get caught, they just cover it up. Marcus exhaled. I need proof, something solid, something that can take them down. Terrence thought for a moment, then pulled out his phone. I got a guy, he said. Elijah's eyes widened. You got a guy? Everybody got a guy, Terrence said. Mine happens to be real good at finding things people want to keep hidden. He dialed a number and waited. After a few rings, someone picked up. A deep voice answered. Who's this? It's T, Terrence said. I need a favor. The voice on the other end paused. What kind of favor? Terrence glanced at Marcus. I need someone to look into a name, Nathaniel Brooks, supposedly arrested for burglary. I need to know if he even exists. The man on the phone let out a low chuckle. Oh, this sounds like trouble. It is, Terrence said. Can you help or not? The voice hummed. Give me an hour. Then the line went dead. Marcus let out a breath. Now we wait. Terrence nodded. Yeah. And in the meantime, we stay put. But outside something moved. Elijah saw it. First, his face going pale. Marcus turned. Through the blinds, under the glow of a street light, the black SUV was parked across the street, waiting, watching. Elijah swallowed. Okay, change of plan. We die here instead. Marcus's stomach twisted. They weren't just being followed. They were being trapped. The next hour felt like forever. The SUV didn't move. No one got out. It just sat there. Then Terrence's phone buzzed. The deep voice spoke. We got a problem. Terrence frowned. What kind of problem? The man sighed. Nathaniel Brooks? He don't exist. Marcus's blood ran cold. What? No records. No history, no fingerprints. It's like he was made up out of thin air. Terrence cursed under his breath. Marcus felt his heart pound. They had arrested a ghost to make sure he took the blame. Elijah gripped the table. Oh, we are so dead. Then a loud thud came from the front door. A shadow moved outside the shop. Marcus froze. Terrence grabbed a bat from behind his desk. Stay behind me, he whispered. Another thud. Then a voice, deep, unfamiliar. Marcus Jackson, we need to talk. Marcus's heart pounded. They had found him, and now they were coming in. The knock came again. Marcus Jackson, we know you're in there. Marcus swallowed hard, his hands clenched into fists. Elijah was breathing too fast beside him, and Uncle Terrence had his bat gripped so tight his knuckles turned white. Back door, Terrence whispered. Both of you now. Marcus hesitated, but now wasn't the time for hesitation. He grabbed Elijah's sleeve and pulled him toward the back. The barbershop had an exit through the alley, but if they were being watched, that meant they already knew about it. Still, they had no choice. Terrence moved toward the front, his shoulders squared. Who's asking? He called out. Pause, then open the door, Mr. Jackson. This doesn't have to get messy. Marcus and Elijah slipped into the back hallway. We're going to die, man, Elijah muttered. We are actually going to die. Shut up, Marcus whispered, pushing the exit door open. Just a crack. A cold rush of air hit them. The alley was empty for now. Marcus took a deep breath. Okay, on 3 we run. Elijah nodded. 1, 2. Before Marcus could say 3, a second SUV pulled into the alley. Its headlights blazed, flooding the narrow space with light. The car skidded to a stop, blocking their only way out. Marcus yanked Elijah back, his heart slamming against his ribs. They were trapped. Inside, Terrence wasn't backing down. You got a warrant? He called, standing just behind the door. Silence, then a different voice, low, smooth, controlled. Mr. Jackson. The voice said, we're just here to talk. Terrence scoffed. Funny, I've heard that before. Then, bang. The door shook as someone slammed against it. Terrence took a step back. The voice on the other side remained calm. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Terrence's grip on the bat tightened. Outside, Marcus's brain raced. They had seconds, maybe less, before whoever was in that SUV got out, and once they did, Marcus didn't want to think about that. He turned to Elijah. Climb the fence. Elijah gawked at him. What? It's our only way out, Marcus said. Climb. Elijah hesitated, then took a running start and leaped. The chain-link fence rattled as he scrambled up, his sneakers slipping against the metal. Marcus followed, gripping the cold steel and pulling himself up. Below them, the SUV doors swung open. Marcus heard the footsteps. Then a voice. There they are. Marcus climbed faster, too slow. A hand grabbed his ankle. He kicked hard, but the grip was strong. Panic surged through him. Elijah reached the top. Come on, man. Marcus gritted his teeth and kicked again. Harder. The grip loosened. Marcus yanked himself up, his fingers scraping against metal. Then, a gunshot. The bullet hit the fence just inches from his hand. Elijah yelped. Holy! Marcus didn't stop, didn't look down. He swung his leg over and dropped. His feet hit the ground, pain shot up his ankle, but he forced himself to move. Elijah grabbed his arm. Run. They bolted. Behind them, the men from the SUV scrambled to climb the fence. But Marcus and Elijah were already gone. They ran until their legs burned, until their lungs felt like fire. They ran through alleys, past flickering streetlights, over sidewalks cracked from age. Finally, they ducked into an old parking garage, hiding behind a row of abandoned cars. They collapsed. Elijah was gasping for air. I hate you. Marcus ignored him, peering over the hood of a rusted sedan. No sign of the SUVs. No footsteps. For now. Elijah sat up, rubbing his face. Man, what did we just run from, the actual FBI? Marcus didn't answer. He was still thinking about the gunshot. They weren't just trying to scare him anymore. They were trying to kill him. Back at the barber shop, Terrence stood in the wreckage of his front door. The men were gone, but the warning was clear. His nephew had gotten too close to something dangerous, and now there was no turning back. The parking garage was silent except for the sound of Marcus and Elijah struggling to catch their breath. Marcus's back was pressed against the cold metal of an abandoned car, his mind racing. They had almost been killed. This wasn't a game anymore. Elijah wiped sweat from his forehead. Bro, what did we just escape from? Marcus shook his head. Don't know, but I do know one thing. Elijah swallowed. What? Marcus looked him in the eye. They're willing to kill to keep their secret. A heavy silence settled between them. Elijah let out a nervous laugh. Man, I thought school was stressful, but nope, almost getting shot. Way worse. Marcus didn't smile. We can't go home. They'll be watching. Elijah exhaled. Great, so where do we go? Marcus thought for a second. Then he pulled out his phone. There was only one person left to call. 15 minutes later, a sleek black car rolled up to the back entrance of the parking garage. A woman in her mid-30s stepped out, dressed in a sharp blazer and jeans. Her long braids fell over her shoulders, and her expression was unreadable. She pushed her sunglasses up onto her head. Marcus, Jackson, you really know how to stir up trouble. Marcus let out a breath of relief. Aunt Vanessa. Vanessa Jackson was a defense attorney, a good one, one of the best, and right now she was their best chance at staying alive. Elijah blinked. You got a lawyer in the family and you didn't call her sooner? Marcus shrugged. Better late than never. Vanessa folded her arms. Get in the car now. Neither of them argued. As soon as the car door shut, Vanessa pulled off, her hands gripping the wheel tight. I've been hearing things, she said. Cops pushing a case that doesn't make sense, witnesses disappearing, and now my nephew is running for his life. Marcus nodded. Bigger than we thought. The guy they arrested for the robbery, he doesn't exist. Vanessa's lips pressed. Together, they set you up, Marcus. And when you started asking questions, they tried to shut you down. Now they're hunting you. Vanessa let out a slow breath. Yeah, I figured it was something like that. Marcus frowned. Wait, you knew? Vanessa didn't take her eyes off the road. I didn't know for sure, but I've seen cases like this before. They pick a scapegoat, someone easy to blame, then they close the case fast before anyone looks too deep. Elijah shook his head. But why? Marcus. Vanessa glanced at him through the rearview mirror. Because you're smart, and smart kids are dangerous to people who like to bend the rules. She turned down a side street, heading toward the edge of town. Elijah leaned forward. Where exactly are we going? Vanessa's jaw tightened. Somewhere safe. Marcus didn't like the sound of that. Where? Vanessa didn't answer, which meant she didn't trust anywhere in the city. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a small, run-down motel. The neon sign buzzed weakly in the night. Vanessa parked and turned to face them. Listen carefully. You two are staying here. Tonight. I paid cash, no paper trail, nobody knows you're here. Marcus crossed his arms. And what about you? Vanessa exhaled. I need to make some calls, figure out how deep this goes. But do not leave this room. Got it? Elijah nodded so fast. His head nearly fell off. Oh, trust me, I have zero plans of going anywhere. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. Got it. Vanessa's eyes softened. I know you're scared, but I won't let anything happen to you. Then she reached into her glove compartment and pulled out a gun. Elijah nearly fell out of the car. Whoa, okay. This just got way too real. Vanessa checked the safety, then tucked the gun into her back. If they're willing to use force, so am I. Marcus stared at her. You really think it's that bad? Vanessa met his eyes. They shot at you, Marcus. What do you think? Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Yeah, it was that bad. Inside the motel room, Elijah locked the door twice. Then, he collapsed onto the bed. All right, I'm done. This is officially the worst day of my life. Marcus sat by the window, staring out at the parking lot. The motel wasn't great. Faded wallpaper, a buzzing TV, but at least for now, they were safe. Elijah sat up. So what now? Marcus exhaled. Now we wait. Elijah groaned. I hate that answer. Marcus smirked slightly. Me too. Elijah rubbed his face. Man, if I had known being your best friend would involve almost getting killed, I would have rethought our whole friendship. Marcus chuckled. Too late now. But his smile didn't last long because deep down, he knew this wasn't over, not even close. And then his phone vibrated. Blocked number. A single message. We know where you are. Marcus's stomach dropped, and then the motel lights outside went out. A shadow moved by the window. Someone was here, and this time they weren't knocking. The motel lights flickered out. Marcus's chest tightened. He could barely see Elijah's face in the sudden darkness, but he could hear the sharp intake of breath. A shadow moved past the window, then another, then a click. The doorknob turned. Elijah whispered, "Oh no." Marcus moved fast. He grabbed Elijah by the shirt and yanked him toward the bathroom. Hide, Marcus whispered. Elijah didn't argue. They slipped inside, closing the door just as, bang, the motel door burst open. Heavy boots thudded against the floor. Marcus's heart pounded in his ears. He pressed his back against the wall, barely breathing. The bathroom was small, just a sink, a toilet, and a shower with a flimsy curtain. Not much cover. Elijah's hands were shaking. Marcus could feel it. From the other room, voices whispered, too low to understand, then footsteps getting closer. Marcus's mind raced. If they opened the door, they were done. They had nowhere to run. His fingers brushed the edge of the toilet tank. An idea sparked. Carefully, silently, Marcus lifted the lid off the back of the toilet and handed it to Elijah. Elijah's eyes went wide. Marcus mouthed, "Be ready." Elijah nodded. Then the bathroom door creaked open. A shadow filled the doorway. A tall, broad-shouldered man in dark clothes stepped in, scanning the small space. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The man's eyes landed on the shower curtain. Slowly he reached for it. Marcus tensed. Then Elijah swung the toilet tank lid. Crack. The man stumbled back, cursing. Marcus lunged forward, grabbing the only other weapon in reach, a cheap motel hairdryer. It wasn't much, but he swung it like his life depended on it. Wham! The man collapsed, dazed. Elijah didn't wait. He bolted out the door, pulling Marcus with him. The motel room was trashed. The bed overturned, drawers pulled out, but Marcus barely had time to process it because standing near the entrance was another man, and this one had a gun. Marcus and Elijah skidded to a stop. The man, dressed in all black, aimed the gun at them. "Where do you think you're going?" Elijah whispered. "Marcus, I don't want to die in a motel." Marcus didn't either. His brain moved fast. The man wasn't shooting. Yet, that meant something. He wasn't here to kill them, at least not yet. "Come with me," the man ordered now. Marcus swallowed. His heart was racing. He glanced at Elijah, then back at the man. Then, a loud bang from outside. Tires screeched. Man turned his head, just for a second. Marcus moved, he grabbed the closest thing, a lamp, and threw it with everything he had. The man barely had time to react before crash. Glass shattered. The gun clattered to the floor. Marcus didn't wait. He grabbed Elijah's arm and ran. Outside, headlights blinded them. A car skidded to a stop. The driver's door flew open. "Vanessa, get in," she yelled. Marcus and Elijah dove into the car before the doors even shut. Vanessa slammed the gas. Tires screeched. The car shot forward, speeding out of the lot. From the rearview mirror, Marcus saw the gunman stumble outside. Another black SUV pulled up next to him. They weren't done. They were going to chase them. Vanessa didn't waste time. "What did you do?" Marcus took a deep breath. "I think I almost got us killed." Elijah threw his hands up. "You think?" Vanessa swore under her breath, making a hard right turn. "Told you to stay put." Marcus shook his head. "They found us anyway." Vanessa didn't argue because she knew he was right. The SUV behind them roared to life, headlights flashing. Then another appeared. Then another. 3 in total. Marcus's stomach twisted. Aunt V, I see them," Vanessa muttered. The first SUV lurched forward, gaining on them. The second swerved to the side, trying to box them in. Elijah gripped the seat. "Avi, I really don't want to die in a car chase either." Vanessa gritted her teeth. "Then hold on." She slammed the brakes. Marcus's head snapped forward. Elijah let out a choked scream. The first SUV caught off guard, swerved hard, trying to avoid them. It clipped the second SUV. Crash! The 2 cars spun out, slamming into a streetlight. The third SUV kept coming. Vanessa floored the gas. The car launched forward. Marcus's pulse hammered. "Are we losing them?" Vanessa's jaw was tight. "Not yet." She swerved onto a side street. Then another. Then the road ahead was blocked by more black SUVs waiting. Elijah groaned. "Are you kidding me? How many do they have?" Vanessa's grip tightened on the wheel. Marcus's stomach dropped. They were surrounded, and this time, there was nowhere left to run. Vanessa slammed the brakes. The car skidded to a stop just inches from the black SUVs blocking the road ahead. Behind them, more headlights appeared. Trapped. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. Elijah barely breathed. "Well, this is how I die in a car, like I always feared." Vanessa's grip tightened on the wheel, her jaw clenched. "Stay calm." Marcus swallowed hard. "They're not here to talk, are they?" Vanessa didn't answer because they all knew the truth. The SUV doors opened. Men stepped out, all dressed in black. No badges, no uniforms, just power. Then one last door opened. Captain Reynolds stepped out, his face unreadable. He walked forward, stopping just a few feet from Vanessa's car. Then slowly he raised his hand, motioning for them to step out. Vanessa's fingers hovered over the gear shift. "Marcus, stay in the car." But Marcus already knew they weren't getting out of this without answers. And he wanted them, all of them, before Vanessa could stop him. Marcus opened the door and stepped out. Elijah cursed under his breath. "Dude, what are you doing?" Vanessa hissed. "Marcus." But it was too late. Marcus walked forward toward Reynolds. The street was empty. The only sound was the hum of the engines. Reynolds studied him. "Brave kid." Marcus stopped. "I'm not brave," his voice was steady. "I'm just not stupid." Reynolds smirked. "Debatable." Marcus's fist tightened. "You tried to frame me." Reynolds shrugged. "You were the perfect choice." Marcus's jaw clenched. Why? Reynolds let out a slow breath. You really want to know? Marcus didn't blink. Yes. Reynolds took a step closer. The streetlights made his face look sharper, harder. Because Marcus, Reynolds said, his voice smooth, you don't belong in the system. You threaten the system. Marcus frowned. What? Reynolds sighed. Smart kids like you see the cracks, the flaws. You ask questions, and questions are dangerous. Marcus swallowed. Reynolds continued, voice calm. Too calm. See, we don't just need criminals to keep the machine running, he said. We need the right criminals, the ones nobody will fight for, the ones people will assume are guilty just by looking at them. Marcus felt his stomach turn. Reynolds tilted his head. What do you think would have happened if we locked you up? Marcus knew the answer. A smart black kid in the system? He would have been swallowed whole. No one would have questioned it. No one would have cared. Reynolds smiled slightly, but instead you fought back. His eyes darkened. And now you know too much. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. Reynolds turned to his men. Take them. The air shifted. Elijah jumped out of the car. Oh, come on, man. Vanessa threw open her door, pulling her gun. Don't even think about it. Reynolds didn't look worried. Put the gun down, Miss Jackson. You're outnumbered. Marcus's brain raced. He was one move away from disappearing forever, one move away from being buried under lies. He had one shot, one chance. He had to break the system before it swallowed him. Then an idea. His only chance. Marcus reached into his pocket. Not for a gun, not for a weapon, for his phone, and he pressed play. Reynolds's voice filled the air. See, we don't just need criminals to keep the machine running. We need the right criminals. The recording was clear. The officers froze. Reynolds's face turned to stone. Marcus's voice was steady. I was recording the second I stepped out of the car. Reynolds's jaw clenched. Marcus lifted the phone higher. And right now, this recording is being sent to every journalist I know. Elijah grinned. Oh, and guess what? The internet loves corruption scandals. Reynolds's eye twitched. You think that'll stop us? Marcus took a step forward. No, he said, but it'll make sure everyone sees what you are. Reynolds's men hesitated. The game had changed. The whole world was about to know the truth. Reynolds exhaled through his nose. Then he smiled, a slow, knowing smile. Well played, he said. Then he turned to his men. Stand down. The officers lowered their weapons. Reynolds looked back at Marcus. This isn't over. Marcus didn't blink. I know. Reynolds smirked. Then I'll see you soon. He stepped back, got into the SUV, and drove away. The others followed. Just like that, they were gone. Silence. Elijah let out a long breath. Okay, that was insane. Vanessa holstered her gun, still tense. Marcus, that was dangerous. Marcus exhaled. I know. She studied him. You were ready to die for that, weren't you? Marcus swallowed, then nodded. Vanessa's eyes softened. Then suddenly, she hugged him tight. Marcus tensed at first, then let himself breathe. Elijah clapped his hands together. So, can we never do that again? Marcus let out a breath. No promises. Elijah groaned. I hate you. Marcus smirked. I know. By morning, the recording was everywhere. News stations, blogs, social media. The city exploded with outrage. Investigations were launched. Careers ended. But Reynolds, he disappeared. No charges, no arrest. Gone. 1 week later, Marcus sat on his porch, staring at the sunset. Vanessa sat beside him. You did it, she said. Marcus didn't answer. 'cause deep down he knew it wasn't over. Reynolds was still out there, watching, waiting, and someday they would come for him again. But next time he'd be ready. 1 week later, the city was still on fire. News anchors called it the justice system scandal of the decade. Protests erupted. People demanded arrests. The mayor held emergency press conferences, promising change. But Marcus knew better. The system didn't change. It just hid its cracks better. And the biggest crack of all, Captain Reynolds was gone. Not arrested, not fired. Gone. No one knew where, no one knew how, and that was a problem because Marcus knew one thing for sure. Reynolds wasn't finished. Marcus sat on his porch, scrolling through the news on his phone. Vanessa leaned against the railing beside him, arms crossed. "You're still thinking about it, aren't you?" Marcus didn't look up. "Of course." Vanessa sighed. "You exposed them. You won." Marcus clenched his jaw. "No, I just made them go underground." He wasn't stupid. When people like Reynolds got caught, they didn't go to jail. They moved, they adapted, they waited. Elijah walked up the steps, holding a soda. "You'll really sitting here all dramatic while I'm just trying to enjoy my day?" Marcus finally looked up. "You're not worried?" Elijah scoffed. "Oh, I'm terrified, but if I stop for even 5 seconds to think about how close we came to getting murdered, I might throw up. So, I'm just vibing instead." Vanessa smirked. "Smart strategy." Marcus sighed, putting his phone down. "I don't get it. Reynolds should be in prison. He should be on trial. Instead, he just vanished." Vanessa exhaled. "Guys like him always have an escape plan." Elijah pointed at Marcus. "And guys like you always got to go poking around and making things worse." Marcus didn't deny it because he was already digging. That night, when the house was quiet, Marcus locked his bedroom door and pulled out his laptop. If Reynolds had disappeared, then there had to be a trail. Marcus had learned something valuable over the last week. The people who ran the system, they were sloppy. They assumed no one was watching. Marcus was watching. He pulled up government databases, news reports, even hacked into private security logs, and then there it was. A flight record, one-way ticket, private plane, destination. Washington, D.C. Marcus's stomach tightened. Reynolds hadn't disappeared. He had moved. Marcus stared at the screen, his fingers hovering over the keys. He could ignore it, pretend it wasn't happening, pretend he was just a normal 12-year-old kid. But that was a lie. He had never been normal, and now the stakes were higher than ever. Marcus exhaled, then he picked up his phone and called Vanessa. When she answered, her voice was groggy. "Marcus." It's 2 a.m. Marcus didn't hesitate. "Reynolds is in D.C." Silence. Then Vanessa cursed. "Send me everything." Marcus already had. She exhaled. "Okay, I'll make some calls, but Marcus." "I know," Marcus said. "This is dangerous." She sighed. "I was going to say you should go to bed, but yeah, that too." Marcus smirked. "No chance." Vanessa muttered something under her breath, then hung up. Marcus closed his laptop. He had taken down Reynolds once. Now he was going to end him for good. The next morning, Vanessa showed up with 2 cups of coffee and a plane ticket. Elijah nearly choked on his breakfast. Wait, what is happening right now?" Vanessa slid the ticket across the table to Marcus. "You coming or not?" Marcus looked at the ticket. It wasn't just for him. There was a second one. Elijah's name was on it. Elijah blinked. "Oh no." Marcus smirked. "Too late, you're already in this." Elijah groaned, slumping over the table. "I hate you so much, bro." Marcus grabbed the ticket. D.C., the capital, the heart of power. That's where Reynolds had run to. That's where Marcus was going. Because this time he wasn't just playing defense, he was taking the fight to them, and he wasn't leaving until Reynolds paid. The plane touched down at Reagan National Airport, and Marcus stared out the window. The skyline of Washington, D.C. stretched before him, gleaming in the morning light. This was it, the final move. Elijah stretched, yawning. "All right, I'm just going to say it. This is officially the most insane thing we've ever done." Marcus smirked. "And we haven't even started yet." Vanessa grabbed her bag. "All right, listen up. We're not tourists. We're here for one reason, to find Reynolds, expose him, and make sure he can never do this again." Elijah groaned. "Cool, just casually. Taking down government corruption. No big deal." Vanessa turned to the car rental counter. "We're going hunting." The drive through D.C. was different. From home. Here, the power wasn't loud. It was quiet, hidden. The city was clean, the buildings polished, but Marcus could feel it. Corruption buried under all that gloss. "Elijah, tapped the GPS, all right, so where exactly are we going?" Marcus scrolled through his phone. "I traced the plane. Rental back to a private security firm. They handle sensitive government matters." Vanessa raised an eyebrow, which is code for "we clean up messes people don't want." "Made public." Marcus nodded. "And guess who just became their newest consultant?" He turned his phone around. On the screen was a security badge with Reynolds' face on it. Elijah groaned. "Oh, come on. This man got promoted." Vanessa's grip on the wheel tightened. "Yeah, that's how it works." Marcus exhaled. "Which means we don't just have to take him down." His eyes burned with determination. "We have to take the whole system down with him." They parked a block away from the Helios security building, a sleek, glass-covered tower. Marcus studied the entrance. High, security cameras everywhere. Elijah sighed. "Let me guess, you got some crazy plan?" Marcus grinned. "You know me so well." Elijah groaned. "I hate that I do." The plan was simple. Marcus would sneak in, Elijah would run distraction, Vanessa would pull the strings from outside, and if it worked, they'd have everything they needed to end Reynolds forever. Marcus slipped into the staff entrance using a stolen key card from an unsuspecting guard. Inside, the building was cold, all steel and glass. He moved quickly, staying low, avoiding the cameras. His heart pounded. If he got caught here, there was no walking away. But he had come too far to back down now. Meanwhile, Elijah did what Elijah did best. Caused chaos. He strolled into the main lobby, acting like he belonged. When a guard looked at him suspiciously, Elijah grinned. "Hey yo, y'all. Hiring? I heard you'll need people for like top-secret government scandals." The guard frowned. "Sir, you need to leave." Elijah nodded, seriously. Cool. But, before I go, who's in charge of the corruption department?" The guard's radio crackled to life. "We have a disturbance." In the lobby, Elijah grinned. "Perfect." While security focused on Elijah, Marcus slipped into the main server room. Rows of computers glowed softly in the dim light. He plugged in a flash drive and started downloading everything: emails, transactions, confidential files, the truth, all of it. Back outside, Vanessa monitored the feeds from her laptop. Her jaw tightened as she scanned the data coming through. "This is bigger than we thought," she muttered. Elijah peeked over her shoulder. "How much bigger?" Vanessa turned the screen. It wasn't just about Reynolds. This was a network. Judges, cops, businessmen, even politicians, all connected, all untouchable until now. Marcus's heart raced as the files finished downloading. He yanked out the flash drive, and then the alarm blared. Security had found him. A voice boomed over the intercom. Intruder in the server room. Marcus's blood ran cold. Then a door slammed open, and standing there, Reynolds. The room felt smaller. Reynolds smirked, arms crossed. I should have known you. Wouldn't let this go. Marcus's grip tightened on the flash drive. I don't like unfinished business. Reynolds took a step closer. You really think you're gonna walk out of here? Marcus smiled. I don't think. I know. Then Vanessa's voice crackled through his earpiece. Now. Boom. The fire alarms exploded. Smoke poured into the hallways, and just like that, the building descended into chaos. Marcus didn't wait, he ran. Reynolds cursed, chasing after him. Security swarmed the hallways, but Marcus was faster. He dodged, slipping through doors, weaving through offices. Then he saw Elijah at the entrance, waving frantically. Move, dude. Move. Marcus sprinted behind him. Reynolds yelled orders, too late. Marcus dived through the doors and straight into Vanessa's getaway car. She peeled out before the guards could react. Elijah collapsed into the seat. Oh, I think I just had a heart attack. Marcus grinned, breathing hard. He had the files, they had everything, and Reynolds? He was done. The next morning, the headlines hit. Corruption exposed, police, politicians, and secret network uncovered. The world saw the truth. People were arrested, careers ended, and Reynolds gone again. Days later, Marcus sat on his porch, staring at the sky. Vanessa sat beside him. You did it, she said. Marcus didn't answer because deep down he knew Reynolds was still out there, and one day they would meet again. But next time, Marcus wouldn't just win, he would end the game.